The planet New Eden was beautiful. Green fields stretched for miles under a pale blue sky. Rivers cut through the land like silver ribbons. 12,000 humans called this place home. They had built their colony far from Earth, in a quiet corner of space where nobody bothered them. Dr. Yoon Dae stood outside the medical center and breathed in the fresh morning air. He had lived here for 6 years now. Before that, he worked in a crowded hospital on Earth where he never saw the sun. Here, he could watch the sunrise every day. Here, he could hear children laughing on their way to school. The colony school sat on a small hill near the center of town. 300 children studied there. From ages 4 to 16, they learned about Earth's history, about mathematics, about the stars above them. Their teacher, a kind woman named Lee Mira, told them stories about the old world and the new one they were building together. On this morning, everything was normal. Farmers worked in their fields. Engineers checked the water systems. Parents kissed their children goodbye and sent them off to learn. Nobody looked up at the sky. Nobody saw the shadows moving behind the clouds. The Korath Empire had been watching humanity for years. They were a warrior species, tall and strong, with gray skin and 4 arms. They had conquered dozens of planets. They believed that strength was the only thing that mattered in the universe. The weak existed to serve the strong. This was their way. Commander Drex stood on the bridge of his warship and looked down at New Eden. He saw the green fields and the small buildings. He saw no military bases. He saw no weapons. He saw only farmers and children. He smiled. "They are weak," he said to his officers. "They have no army here. No protection. We will take this planet in 1 hour. When other humans see what we have done, they will fear us. They will never try to expand into our territory again." His officers agreed. Humanity was a young species. They had only been traveling among the stars for 200 years. They had no reputation as warriors. They preferred to trade and talk rather than fight. The Korath saw this as weakness. Elder Miros, an old advisor on the ship, said nothing. He had read reports about humanity. He had studied their history. He knew about their wars, their weapons, their terrible capacity for violence against each other. But Commander Drex did not want to hear warnings from an old man. He wanted glory. The attack began at noon. Korath warships descended from the clouds like angry birds. They fired upon the communication towers first, cutting off New Eden from the rest of humanity. Then they destroyed the small security station where a handful of guards tried to fight back. The guards died within minutes. People ran through the streets, screaming. Mothers grabbed their children and hid in basements. Fathers picked up farming tools and tried to defend their homes. They were not soldiers. They did not know how to fight, but they tried anyway. Commander Drex watched from above and laughed. This was too easy. These humans were nothing. A squad of Korath soldiers marched toward the school on the hill. Their commander, a brutal warrior named Krell, had orders to take hostages. Children made the best hostages. Their parents would do anything to save them. When the Korath soldiers broke down the school doors, they expected the children to cry and hide. They expected submission. They expected fear. They did not expect a 7-year-old boy to throw a rock at Krell's face. The rock hit the warrior between his eyes. It was a small rock, thrown by small hands. It did no real damage, but it surprised Krell. And then, another rock came, and another. The children were throwing everything they could find. Rocks, books, chairs, pieces of broken glass. They were not crying. They were fighting. Krell felt something he had never felt before when facing an enemy. He felt insulted. These tiny creatures, these weak little humans, dared to resist him? Did they not understand that they were facing the mighty Korath Empire? He contacted Commander Drex. "The young ones are fighting back," he said. "They are throwing objects at us." Commander Drex laughed again. "Then teach them a lesson about defiance," he ordered. "Show them what happens when you challenge the Korath. What happened next would change the course of galactic history. The Korath soldiers did not simply capture the children. They hurt them. They broke their bones. They burned their skin. They did it slowly, making sure the others watched. Krell wanted them to understand that resistance was pointless. He wanted to break their spirits. But even as the children screamed in pain, some of them kept fighting. A 4-year-old girl bit a soldier's hand so hard that she drew blood. A 10-year-old boy kicked and scratched until 3 soldiers had to hold him down. Even when they could not win, they refused to stop. The attack lasted 2 hours. When it was over, 47 children were badly injured. 12 were dead. The youngest victim was 4 years old. Her name was Han Yuna. She had been trying to protect her little brother when a Korath soldier struck her down. Dr. Yoon-dae worked through the night. The medical center was overwhelmed. Children lay on beds and floors and tables, crying for their parents. Their injuries were severe. Burns covered their small bodies. Bones were broken in ways that suggested deliberate cruelty. As he worked to save them, Dr. Yoon-dae felt something cold growing in his chest. He was a healer. He had sworn to save lives, not to take them. But looking at what had been done to these children, he felt something he had not felt in many years. He felt rage. When the communication systems were finally repaired, he sent a single message to Earth. It was short. It was simple. It would reach every government, every military base, every human being with access to a screen. The message said, "They hurt our children. They laughed while doing it." And across the galaxy, humanity heard. General Baekjin received the message at 3 in the morning. He was sleeping in his small apartment near the military headquarters when his phone began to ring. He answered it with tired eyes, expecting a routine report about some minor incident. When he finished reading, his hands were shaking. He had served in the military for 35 years. He had seen terrible things. He had made decisions that haunted his dreams. But this was different. These were not soldiers who had died in battle. These were children. Small, innocent children, who had done nothing wrong except exist in a place where monsters had decided to attack. He called an emergency meeting of the Unified Defense Council. Within 2 hours, representatives from every nation on Earth had gathered. They came from different countries, spoke different languages, and had spent centuries fighting each other. But tonight, they sat together in silence, looking at the images from New Eden. Nobody spoke for a long time. What was there to say? Admiral Kim Tae entered the room last. He was a calm man, known for his patience and his love of peaceful solutions. He had 2 children of his own, a boy and a girl, both around the same age as the victims on New Eden. When he looked at the photographs, he saw their faces. "They targeted children," he said. His voice was quiet, but everyone heard him. Not soldiers, not military targets, children. A representative from the European coalition stood up. Her name was Sophia Berg, and she was known for her diplomatic approach to problems. She had spent her career avoiding wars, finding peaceful solutions, building bridges between enemies. Today, she did not want peace. "What do we do?" she asked. Admiral Kim Tae looked around the room. He saw the same expression on every face. It was not fear. It was not sadness. It was something darker. Something that humans usually kept hidden deep inside themselves. "We remind the galaxy why they should never touch our children," he said. The vote was unanimous. Not a single representative disagreed. There were no arguments about politics or resources or strategy. For the first time in human history, every nation on Earth agreed on something without debate. They would respond. They would respond with everything they had. Operation Silent Wrath was authorized within the hour. Every human fleet in the galaxy was recalled. Warships that had been patrolling peaceful trade routes changed course and headed for Earth. Factories that made cars and phones and toys stopped their production lines and began making weapons. Scientists working on medicine and technology dropped their projects and joined the military research teams. The speed of the response shocked even the humans themselves. Things that usually took months were completed in days. Disagreements that had lasted for years were forgotten in hours. Every human being seemed to understand, without being told, that something terrible had happened and that they all needed to work together. On a distant planet called Thessia, an alien ambassador named Relos watched the human response with growing fear. He was a Valari, a peaceful species that had traded with humans for decades. He liked humans. He found them friendly and creative and interesting. But he also knew their history. He had read about their world wars, where they had killed each other by the millions. He had read about their atomic bombs, weapons so powerful that they could destroy entire cities in seconds. He had read about their capacity for violence when pushed too far. And now, someone had pushed them too far. He sent an urgent message to the Korath Empire. It said, "You do not understand what you have awakened. Surrender the ones responsible immediately. Offer payment. Beg for forgiveness. It may already be too late, but you must try. If you do not, your empire will not survive." Overlord Ven, the leader of the Korath Empire, read the message and laughed. He sat on his throne, made of bones from conquered enemies, and felt no fear at all. Humanity was young. Humanity was weak. They had no great fleet. They had no reputation as warriors. What could they possibly do? The Valari are cowards, he told his council. They fear everything. Humanity will send an angry message. Perhaps they will demand payment. We will give them nothing, and they will accept it because they have no choice. Elder Miro stood in the corner of the throne room, listening. He was the oldest member of the High Council, and he remembered things that the younger Korath had forgotten. He remembered the stories about species that seemed weak until they were threatened. He remembered the warnings about pushing certain enemies too far. "My lord," he said carefully, "I have studied humanity. They are different from other species. When they fight each other, they fight with terrible fury. They create weapons that destroy everything. They do not stop until their enemies are completely defeated." Overlord Ven waved his hand dismissively. "They fight each other, yes. But they are too divided to fight us. They have hundreds of different nations, different languages, different beliefs. They cannot unite. They united when we attacked their children," Elder Miros said quietly. Overlord Ven's eyes narrowed. "What are you saying, Old One? That we should be afraid? I am saying that we should be careful. Perhaps we should offer to return the colony. Perhaps we should punish Commander Drex ourselves, as a sign of good faith." The throne room fell silent. Overlord Ven stood up slowly, his forearms spread wide. He was twice the size of Elder Miros, and he used his body to remind everyone of his power. "We do not surrender," he said. "We do not apologize. We do not show weakness. That is not the Korath way." Elder Miros bowed his head. He had said what he could say. Now, all he could do was wait and watch as his empire made the greatest mistake in its history. Across the galaxy, human ships began to move. Millions of soldiers prepared for war. Weapons of unimaginable power were loaded onto warships. And in the hearts of every human being, a simple truth burned like fire. You hurt our children. Now, you will learn what that means. Captain Park Hana sat alone in a dark room, reading the names of 47 children. She read each name slowly, saying them out loud, making sure she remembered every single one. Then she read the names of the 12 who had died. She was the commander of the Shadow Corps, a special military unit that officially did not exist. The government denied any knowledge of them. Their missions were never recorded. Their methods were never discussed. But when humanity needed something done quietly and completely, they called Captain Park Hana. Admiral Kim Tae had given her simple orders. Find everyone responsible. Find the soldiers who hurt the children. Find the commanders who gave the orders. Find the leaders who allowed it to happen. Find all of them. How far do I go? She had asked. As far as necessary. He had replied. That was all she needed to hear. Her first step was intelligence. She needed to know everything about the Korath forces that had attacked New Eden. She needed names, locations, habits, weaknesses. For this, she turned to Lieutenant Choi Su. Choi Su was only 24 years old, but she was already the most skilled intelligence officer in human history. She could break into any computer system. She could read any code. She could find secrets that people thought were buried forever. Some said she was a genius. Others said she was something more. I need everything, Captain Park Hana told her. Every soldier who was present during the attack. Every officer who knew about it. Every ship that carried them there. I want to know what they eat for breakfast. I want to know their fears. I want to know if they have families. Choi Su nodded. She did not ask why. She did not question the orders. She simply began to work. Within 3 days, she had broken into the Korath military network. Their security was strong, but she was stronger. She moved through their systems like a ghost, copying files and reading messages without leaving any trace. Within a week, she had identified every Korath soldier who had been at New Eden. There were 237 of them. She found their names, their ranks, their home planets, their service records. She found photographs of their families. She found their medical records, their psychological profiles, their personal communications. Commander Drex had sent messages to his wife during the attack. He had described what his soldiers were doing to the children. He had used words like entertainment and sport. His wife had responded with approval. Choi Su read those messages and felt nothing. She had trained herself to feel nothing when she worked. Emotions made mistakes. Emotions left traces. She would feel later, when the mission was complete. For now, she was a machine. She gave all the information to Captain Park Hana. Every name, every location, every weakness. Captain Park Hana studied the files for 2 days. She did not sleep. She did not eat. She only planned. Then the hunt began. The first target was a small Korath military outpost on a moon called Kellis. It was far from the main empire, used mostly for storing supplies and training new soldiers. 43 of the soldiers from New Eden were stationed there, enjoying their reward for a successful mission. They never saw the Shadow Corps coming. The human ships were built for stealth. They made no sound. They gave off no heat. They moved through space like darkness itself. When they reached Kellis, they did not announce themselves. They did not demand surrender. They simply acted. The attack lasted 12 minutes. When it was over, the 43 soldiers were gone. Not dead. Gone. Taken to a place where they would answer for what they had done. The remaining Korath on the base were left alive. But they found something carved into the wall of the main building. The message was written in the Korath language. It said, "Where are your children tonight?" Commander Drex received the report 3 hours later. He read it twice, then 3 times. He did not understand. How had humans attacked a Korath base? How had they done it so quickly, so quietly? And what did that message mean? He sent more troops to protect the other soldiers from New Eden. He increased security on every base. He ordered constant patrols around all Korath systems. It did not matter. One by one, the soldiers disappeared. Sometimes they were taken from their beds while they slept. Sometimes they vanished during patrol missions. Sometimes entire ships went silent. And when other Korath vessels found them, the crews were gone. But everything else was untouched. Each time, a message was left behind. We remember their names. 47 children. 12 graves. Fear began to spread through the Korath military. Soldiers refused to sleep alone. Officers demanded extra guards. Some warriors, the bravest of the brave, began to whisper about surrender. Commander Drex tried to keep control. He gave speeches about Korath's strength and honor. He promised that humanity would be crushed. He said that these attacks were the desperate acts of a weak enemy. But at night, when he was alone, he checked the locks on his doors 3 times. He slept with weapons beside his bed. And sometimes, in the darkness, he thought he heard footsteps that were not there. Overlord Ven watched the reports with growing anger. His soldiers were being taken like animals, and he could do nothing to stop it. He did not understand how this was possible. Humanity was supposed to be weak. Find them, he ordered. Find these shadow soldiers and destroy them. But the Shadow Corps could not be found. They moved like smoke. They struck like lightning. And they never stopped. Captain Park Hana crossed names off her list one by one. She did not smile. She did not celebrate. She simply continued her work with cold, patient determination. The hunt was far from over. The sky above the Korath homeworld turned black with human ships. Admiral Kim Tae stood on the bridge of the flagship, looking down at the planet where the enemy lived. 12,000 warships surrounded the world in every direction. 2 million soldiers waited for his command. Behind them, supply ships carried enough weapons and food to fight for years if necessary. It was the largest military force ever gathered in the history of the galaxy. No species had ever seen anything like it. No species had ever imagined that humanity could create something so powerful, so quickly, with such terrible purpose. Admiral Kim Tae opened a communication channel that would broadcast to every corner of the Korath Empire. His voice was calm and clear. This is Admiral Kim Tae of the United Earth Fleet. You have 1 hour to surrender Commander Drex and every soldier who participated in the attack on New Eden. You will hand them over to us, alive and unharmed. If you refuse, we will show you what happens when you hurt human children. He paused, letting the words sink in. Your hour begins now. On the planet below, Overlord Ven stood in his throne room, surrounded by his generals and advisors. His 4 hands gripped the arms of his chair so tightly that the stone cracked beneath his fingers. He stared at the screens showing the human fleet, and for the first time in his life, he understood fear. But he was Korath. He was the supreme leader of a warrior empire. He could not show fear. He could not surrender. His people would never forgive him. We will fight, he declared. We will destroy this human fleet and show the galaxy that the Korath bow to no one. Elder Miros closed his eyes. He knew what was coming. He had tried to warn them. Nobody had listened. The Korath fleet rose to meet the humans. 3,000 warships, crewed by the finest warriors in the Empire. They had conquered dozens of worlds with these ships. They had never lost a major battle. They believed that their strength and courage would carry them to victory. The battle lasted 11 minutes. Human weapons cut through Korath shields like they were made of paper. Missiles that the Korath could not see or detect destroyed their ships before they could even fire. Human pilots flew with perfect coordination, moving as one mind, striking with deadly precision. The Korath fought bravely. They truly did. They charged into the human lines with all their strength, firing everything they had. But it was like throwing rocks at a storm. They could not touch the humans. They could not even slow them down. Within 11 minutes, the Korath fleet was gone. 3,000 ships, destroyed or disabled. Hundreds of thousands of warriors, dead or surrendering. The orbital defenses, which had protected the homeworld for centuries, were reduced to floating debris. Admiral Kim Tae watched the destruction with no expression on his face. He felt no joy. He felt no satisfaction. He only felt tired. Begin landing operations, he ordered. Human soldiers descended on the Korath homeworld like rain. They came in dropships and transport vehicles, landing in every major city at the same time. The ground forces of the Korath tried to resist, but they were overwhelmed within hours. Captain Park Hana led the assault on the capital city. Her Shadow Corps moved through the streets like ghosts, taking down enemy soldiers before they even knew they were under attack. She had one mission: find Overlord Ven and Commander Drex. She found Overlord Ven trying to escape through a secret tunnel beneath his palace. He was running like a scared animal, abandoning his people, thinking only of his own survival. When he saw her standing at the end of the tunnel, blocking his path, he stopped. "You cannot do this," he said. "I am the Overlord. I am protected by galactic law. There are rules about the treatment of leaders." Captain Parkhana looked at him for a long moment. Then she spoke in a voice as cold as space itself. "Were there rules when your soldiers burned our children? Were there rules when they broke their bones for entertainment? Were there rules when they killed a 4-year-old girl because she tried to protect her brother?" Overlord Ven had no answer. "You wanted to teach our children a lesson about defiance," she continued. "Now, we will teach you a lesson about consequences." She did not kill him. Death would have been too easy. Instead, she took him prisoner, along with every officer and official who had supported the attack on New Eden. Commander Drex was found hiding in a bunker beneath the military headquarters. He had surrounded himself with his most loyal soldiers, but they surrendered the moment they saw the Shadow Corps approaching. They knew that fighting was pointless. When Commander Drex was brought before Admiral Kim Tae, the Admiral did not shout or threaten. He simply placed a small device on the table between them. It was a holographic projector. "These are the children you ordered your soldiers to attack," Admiral Kim Tae said. Images appeared in the air. Faces of children, one after another. Some were smiling in photographs taken before the attack. Others showed them in hospital beds, wrapped in bandages, their eyes full of pain. The 12 who had died appeared last, their images surrounded by flowers. "You will memorize their names," Admiral Kim Tae said. "All 47 survivors, all 12 who died. You will remember what you did to them for the rest of your life." Commander Drex looked at the images. For the first time since the attack, he saw the children not as weak creatures to be taught a lesson, but as people. Small people with families and dreams and futures that he had destroyed. He began to understand what he had done, and he began to understand that his punishment would last forever. The Korath Empire was gone. It did not fall slowly, like empires usually do. It did not fade over centuries of decline. It ended in weeks. Completely and totally. Erased from the galaxy, like it had never existed. Every Korath military base was dismantled. Their weapons were destroyed. Their warships were taken apart piece by piece and melted down into raw materials. The proud warriors who had conquered dozens of worlds found themselves with nothing. No fleet. The colonies they had taken were freed. The species they had enslaved were released. The fear they had spread across the galaxy was replaced by something new. The fear of humanity. Overlord Ven was put on trial. The courtroom was broadcast across every planet in the known galaxy. Billions of beings watched as the once mighty leader sat in chains, forced to listen as his crimes were read aloud. The attack on New Eden. The deaths of the children. The torture ordered by his commanders. Everything was exposed. He was not sentenced to death. That would have been too kind. Instead, he was stripped of everything: his title, his wealth, his dignity. He was dressed in simple clothes and paraded through the streets of New Eden, where the survivors of the attack were given the chance to speak to him. Most of them said nothing. They just looked at him with eyes that held no anger, no hate, only a deep and terrible sadness. Their silence was worse than any words. Their silence told him exactly what he had done. Overlord Ven spent the rest of his life in a small cell on a distant moon. He was kept alive, but given nothing. No visitors, no entertainment, no hope, just the memory of what he had been and what he had become. Commander Drex's punishment was different. He was taken to a prison asteroid far from any planet. His cell was comfortable enough, with a bed and basic supplies, but every wall was covered with photographs. Photographs of the 47 children he had ordered attacked. Photographs of the 12 who had died. Every morning, a recording played their names. Every night, the same recording played again. He could not escape them. He could not forget them. They would be with him for the rest of his very long life. Some said this was cruel. Some said humanity had gone too far. But nobody said it loudly. Nobody wanted to be the next one to learn what happened when you hurt human children. Admiral Kim Tae returned to Earth as a hero. There were parades and celebrations and speeches praising his leadership. But he took no joy in any of it. He had done what needed to be done. Nothing more. He visited the families of the 12 children who had died. He sat with each family for hours, listening to their stories about their lost sons and daughters. He apologized for not protecting them sooner. He promised that no human child would ever be harmed again. "How can you promise that?" one mother asked him, tears streaming down her face. Admiral Kim Tae looked at her with steady eyes. "Because now, the galaxy knows what we will do. They know that there is no limit to how far we will go. They know that hurting our children means the end of everything they have. No species will make that mistake again." Captain Park Hana disappeared after the war, as she always did. There were rumors that she had taken a new assignment somewhere in the outer regions of space. There were whispers that other threats existed, other enemies who needed to learn the lesson the Korath had learned. Nobody knew for sure. Nobody asked. Lieutenant Choi Soo was promoted to head of the intelligence division. She was still young, still quiet, still watching everything with her careful eyes. She compiled a final report on the Korath conflict, analyzing everything that had happened and what it meant for humanity's future. Her conclusion was simple but powerful. "Humanity is not the strongest species in the galaxy," she wrote. "We are not the most advanced or the most numerous. But we are the most protective. Other species fight for territory, for resources, for pride. We fight for our children. And when we fight for our children, we do not stop until the threat is completely eliminated. Permanently." The report was classified at the highest level. But somehow, copies of it appeared in the governments of every major alien species. Nobody knew how this happened. Captain Park Hana, when asked, simply smiled and said nothing. Dr. Yoon Dae stayed on New Eden. He could have returned to Earth as a hero, Tenper, but he chose to remain in the place he had called home for 6 years. He helped rebuild the colony. He treated patients. He tried to help the survivors heal, both in body and in mind. He rebuilt the school with his own hands. It took him months of work, but he refused to let anyone else do it. When the new building was finished, he stood at the entrance on the first day and watched the children run inside. They were laughing. They were playing. They were being children again. He knew they carried scars. He knew that some of them would never fully recover from what had happened. But they were alive. They were healing. And they were not afraid. A new saying spread across the galaxy in the years that followed. It was whispered in bars and meeting rooms, in military academies and government halls. It was written in diplomatic manuals and taught to young officers as the most important lesson they would ever learn. The saying was simple. You can fight humanity and survive. You can defeat their armies and recover. But harm their children, and your entire species will pay the price. No alien species ever attacked a human colony again. No alien soldier ever raised a weapon against a human child. The memory of what happened to the Korath was too fresh, too terrible, too absolute. Humanity had shown the galaxy what they truly were, and the galaxy would never forget.